Ever heard that saying, holier than the Pope?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be diving into those times when saints actually challenged the papacy.
Oh, wow.
And it gets really interesting. We're not talking, just like casual disagreements here, right?
Right.
These are moments where saints felt like they had to resist what they saw as serious wrongdoing, like really serious stuff.
Yeah, you're right. These are extraordinary situations. I mean, can you imagine, disagreeing with the Pope?
I know.
The figure who's considered to be Christ's representative on earth?
Exactly.
It's a huge deal.
So to kick things off, can you give us a sense of just how rare it was for saints to publicly disagree with the Pope?
It was incredibly uncommon. I mean, throughout history, there have been hundreds of saints.
Right.
But only a handful ever publicly challenged a pope. These were momentous decisions driven by a belief that something was deeply wrong and needed to be addressed, even if it meant, going against the established order.
It makes you think, what could possibly push someone to that point, Especially someone like St. Catherine of Siena. I mean, she literally told a pope to be a man. What was going on there?
Yeah, St. Catherine, she was a force to be reckoned with, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So it was the 14th century, and the church was kind of a mess.
Okay.
There's a lot of turmoil. The papacy, the Pope was residing in Avignon, France, instead of Rome.
Oh, wow.
This period, it's called the Avignon papacy. And it was a time of, widespread corruption and decline in the church's moral authority. Catherine, she saw this firsthand and felt she had a spiritual obligation to do something about it.
So she didn't just send a strongly worded letter.
Oh, she wrote letters, fiery ones, but she went a step further.
Right.
She traveled to Avignon and confronted Pope Gregory XI directly. She was bold, demanded he return to Rome, root out the corruption, and be a true spiritual leader.
Wow, talk about taking your concerns straight to the top.
Right.
It really highlights how this wasn't just a theological debate for these saints, but a matter of deep personal conviction.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about corruption. Sometimes the challenges were about different views on leadership, on the church's direction. Take St. Bernard of Clairvaux as an example. He was all about monastic reform, a simpler, more spiritually focused life. That was his thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Didn't he have some disagreements with Pope Eugenius III?
He did, yeah. Bernard felt Eugenius was getting too caught up in worldly affairs, neglecting his spiritual duties. He saw the Pope's actions as straying from the church's true mission. So he wrote him, criticized him, urging him to get back to basics.
So it wasn't necessarily about doctrine, but more about the direction of the papacy itself.
Yeah, you got it. For Bernard, true spiritual leadership meant rejecting those worldly distractions, embracing a simpler, more pious approach. Couldn't have one without the other.
That concept of a simpler, more focused church, it reminds me of another giant in church history, Thomas Aquinas.
Oh, yeah?
And while he didn't directly challenge a pope, he did have some pretty, radical ideas about resisting authority, even papal authority.
That's right. Aquinas, brilliant theologian, really thought carefully about the limits of obedience. He said that if a pope were promoting heresy, teachings that contradicted the core of the faith or was just totally immoral, there could be grounds for resistance.
So there were lines even a pope couldn't cross. That's a bold stance for that time.
It was bold. And, his writings, they really impacted how the church thought about these issues. Obedience to God and his laws, that was paramount even before obedience to the Pope.
But this wasn't all theoretical for him, right? Aquinas, he actually outlined specific conditions under which resistance might be justified.
He did, yeah. He argued that any resistance, it had to be for the right reasons, like protecting the faith or preventing harmful teachings from spreading, not out of self-interest or, wanting power. He was crystal clear on that.
So it was about protecting what the church was really about, not about getting ahead or trying to take down the papacy.
Right, exactly. And that takes us to another really interesting case. St. Peter Damian. Now, this guy, he did not shy away from confronting corruption, especially within the church, up at the top.
He went after Pope Benedict IX, didn't he?
He did.
I mean, that papacy was full of scandal.
Oh, it was a mess. Truly one of the most scandalous periods. Benedict IX's behavior was really bad. And Damian, he called him out publicly. He was basically look, a pope who acts like this, totally unfit to lead.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine?
It's hard to wrap your head around that today. Somebody, having the guts to say that. So how did Damian resist? Did he, like, outright call for the Pope to be removed?
Well, he took a multi-pronged approach, you could say.
Hey.
He wrote these scathing letters, right? Delivered these fiery sermons condemning the corruption. And he just kept pushing for reform within the church, just constantly advocating. And, his actions alongside others, they actually did contribute to Benedict X eventually being deposed.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't just about getting rid of this one Pope.
Mm-hmm.
It was about, like, the bigger picture, like protecting the church's integrity, its reputation going forward.
You got it. Damien, he knew, right, that a church that just tolerates that kind of behavior from anyone, especially its leaders, it loses all moral authority. He really believed that true leadership starts with holding those in power accountable, even especially the Pope.
Yeah, you can see how those themes of, like, accountability, of challenging power, they run through all these stories of these different saints.
Absolutely. It speaks to their dedication to their faith and to the church. But, it wasn't always about these really direct confrontations. Sometimes it was more subtle.
Okay.
Like with St. Robert Bellarmine, for example. Yeah. Now, this is a doctor of the church we're talking about.
Yeah, that's a big deal, right? Like, that title, that means something.
Oh, yeah. Big contributions to Catholic thought.
Yeah.
Bellarmine, he really dug into the whole question of, like, papal authority.
Yeah.
Even the most devout believer might, like, hesitate to go there.
Yeah, that's tricky territory.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
But he argued that, the Pope should be obeyed on matters of faith and morals,
right.
But he's not above God's law, right?
So there were, like, boundaries, even for the Pope.
Yeah.
What did Bellarmine think should happen if those boundaries were crossed?
Well, he said that if a Pope were to, command something that just went against divine law or church teaching, well, then resistance wouldn't just be, like, allowed.
Yeah.
It would be actually required.
Oh, wow. Strong words.
Yeah.
Especially coming from someone like him.
Right. And it really shows just how seriously he took this whole issue. Bellarmine wasn't, like, advocating for rebellion against the Pope. Right. What he wanted was a discerning faith, one that acknowledged that even someone in that position could still, mess up.
That's a tough needle to thread, like recognizing the authority of the Pope.
Yeah.
But also acknowledging that they're human and they can make mistakes.
Exactly.
And that makes me think about another, like, super tumultuous period for the church.
Right.
The Western Schism. How did St. Vincent Ferrer, like, how did he deal with that, with multiple people all claiming to be the Pope?
Oh, man, the Western Schism, that was just, like, off the charts confusion.
Yeah.
Just division, imagine multiple popes running around. Who's the real one? Nobody knew.
Right.
So Vincent Ferrer, he initially supported the Avignon Pope, but then he changed his mind.
Why did he do that?
He came to believe that Pope, the one in Avignon, he was actually harming the church, that he was dividing it so badly that it couldn't, like, function.
Oh.
Couldn't serve the people, So he took a radical stance because of it.
What did he do?
He called for the Avignon Pope to resign. He was like, that's it. You got to go. He really believed it was the only way to heal that division and get the church back on track. To him, the good of the church, that was more important than any one person, even the Pope.
It makes you think about, like, the responsibility we all have to our faith, to our community. It really makes you think about, where's that line? Like, when do you respect authority, but also follow what you believe is right? Yeah. Especially, when we're talking about faith here.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And St. Alphonsus Liguori, he really understood that tension. Brilliant guy, theologian, moral philosopher, really got into those tough questions.
So what do you say? When did he think it was okay to push back against the Pope?
St. Alphonsus, he went beyond just saying it was, like, permissible, He actually said that it was a moral obligation to resist if the Pope commands something against faith or morals.
Wow. So it's not even, like, an option. It's something you got to do.
It's about, like, putting your faith into action, He believed that ultimately we answer to God, and nobody, not even the Pope, has the right to lead us astray from that. That's, like, the heart of it all.
It's a good reminder that everybody makes mistakes.
For sure.
Even people in really powerful positions.
Yeah, remembering that human element is so important. And, that brings us to maybe the most extreme example, St. Athanasius, standing up to a pope who seemed to be, giving in to heresy.
Right, St. Athanasius, known for, like, never backing down from what he believed about Christianity, especially when it came to Arianism.
Man, Arianism, that was a whole other level. Challenged the very core of, who Christ is, was Christ divine?
Right.
Huge issue. And Athanasius, he ends up disagreeing with Pope Liberius himself.
Wow. So this wasn't just like a difference of opinion on something small.
Well, no, this is a big deal. Liberius, he kind of seemed to be giving in to the Arians, probably felt a ton of pressure, you can imagine.
So what did Athanasius do?
He stood his ground, absolutely refused to back down. He saw it as his duty, like a sacred obligation, to stand up for the truth, even if it meant going against the Pope publicly. Think about the guts that it took.
I can't even imagine. It's like everything's on the line for him, his reputation, his place in the church, everything.
Everything. But he kept preaching against Arianism even when it got him exiled, even excommunicated by the Pope. It was only after Liberius came around, took back his support for the Arians, that Athanasius was welcomed back.
What a story. Talk about standing up for what you believe in. So looking back at all these saints, right? Each one challenged the Pope in their own way. What's the common thread? What ties them all together?
What's amazing is they came from different times, different personalities, different issues they were dealing with, but they all, every single one, had this deep, deep love for the church. Mm-hmm. They weren't out to destroy it. They weren't revolutionaries. They were reformers. They loved the church enough to say, hey, I think we're going off track here.
It's like sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to ask the tough questions.
Yeah.
Even when it's like uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And even today, we can learn from these stories, from what these saints went through.
Yeah, how so?
Their courage, it makes us think about our own faith, right? Our relationship with authority, and encourages us to really wrestle with these tough questions, to talk about them, to find our own voice in the church.
So it's not just about following blindly. It's about like really owning your faith.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. It's about having a faith that's personal, but also rooted in truth. These saints, they challenge the way things were, and they remind us that it's okay to question, to seek understanding. That's not weakness. That's how faith stays alive.
It's about having the courage to speak your mind, to ask those tough questions, and to never stop learning and growing in your faith.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And by doing that, we become part of this conversation that's been going on for centuries, shaping the church, helping it become what it's meant to be.
This has been an incredible dive. It's amazing to see how these saints, their struggles, their beliefs, they still have so much to teach us about faith, about authority, about standing up for what we believe in.
It's been a pleasure exploring these amazing figures with you.